Okay, hi. Our conversation this afternoon is focused on a workshop that I'll be delivering in Birmingham on March the 20th of this year. And that workshop is called The Power of Compassion. And it's based, the focus is around the 4 compassion-based practices in the Mindfulness for Health, the Breathworks Mindfulness for Health course. But of course, those practices find an echo as well in the Mindfulness for Stress program. So I'm joined by Vidyamala. Welcome.
Great to be here with you, Colette. Always good to hang out with you.
Yeah, she's just back from the gym.
Yeah.
And of course, she's the founder of Breathworks. And I wanted to ask her why, when she wrote the Mindfulness for Health course, that she included such a significant emphasis on the compassion-based practices, which, if I'm right, make up about half of the course.
Yeah. Well, the whole program is infused by compassion as well as mindfulness. But from about week 4 onwards, the practices are primarily compassion-based practices. And the reason I did this is partly my own training. So when I learned to meditate, I was taught, I learned in the Buddhist tradition, and I was taught that it was important to alternate daily. So one day you do mindfulness and one day you do kindness practices. And I did that for decades, and I found it very, very helpful. So when it came time for me to design a mindfulness-based program for people with chronic health conditions, it seemed obvious to me. Well, it seemed essential to me that we had this balance between awareness training and what you could call kindness training. And I felt very, well, I wasn't going to negotiate that. It just felt absolutely essential. And I think the reason why it's so important is because it warms it up. If we're dealing with difficulty of any kind in life, we need to have, I like the word tender, we need to have a tender, kind, caring relationship as we come into relationship with our difficulty and how we respond to our difficulty. Otherwise, it can be a little bit cool, a little bit aloof, even a little bit detached, a little bit alienated. So, and I suppose the training is to treat one's own pain or difficulty the way one would naturally respond to a loved one who was hurting. We know how to do it for people that we love, and we need to learn how to do it for ourselves. So that's one reason. The 4th compassion practice that we teach on our programs, Mindfulness for Health and also Mindfulness for Stress, is the connection practice. And this is also a really, really important part of the program, because a lot of the program is about, well, how do we manage our difficulties with greater wisdom, greater awareness, greater tenderness and kindness. But of course, that's all about oneself. Whereas for me, it's a very important part of the program that through doing that self-training, you also cultivate empathy. So you use that training in terms of transforming your own reactivity towards your own difficulty as this touchstone that so for me, so for all. As for me, so for all. As for me, so for all. So by waking up the heart and waking up awareness, what we're doing is we're waking up to the human condition. So we're learning not only to be kind to ourselves, but also to be kind to others. And that other regarding aspect is a really important part of the program for me. And it's an important part of any compassion-based approach. So that's my answer to your question. So I'm curious now, Colette, why are the compassion practices important to you in your life and in your teaching?
Yeah, it follows the same pattern. I would say that it's my relationship to the practices have started with me, and my relationship to experience and culminated into a greater sense of connection, and understanding that my experience is not singular. So I know that the Mindfulness for Health course is particularly useful for people who experience physical pain or illness, but my suffering was more psychological, if you like. So I struggled, was very self-critical and negative about myself. And I also didn't know how well to soothe myself, to be kind to myself, if you like. And so I was kind of short on resilience. Things would easily knock me down, and it would take me quite a long time to get back up again because of my mental processes. So I needed time and space. And, you know, when there's kindness and tenderness and compassion, there's space, and that enabled me to see the mental habits and repetitions that I found so painful and difficult. And of course, I had a really strong negativity bias. I was continually trying to keep myself safe, and that was really exhausting. So, you know, that sense of meta that infuses mindfulness and compassion-based practices was like water in the desert, really, for someone who was so unkind to themselves. And that kept me in alert as well. So, yeah, the practices enabled me to understand what being kind to myself meant, and also befriending my own experience. So experience can arise now and do what it does and pass away without me owning it so much, without making it mine. And I also saw through my teaching and training that, you know, I'm not singularly dysfunctional, that we suffer, all of us, in different ways. And that was such a relief to know that, and that enabled me to actually come closer to people, which made me, I experienced the social safeness then that was really important to me. So my fixation on me and my dysfunction softened and softened and softened. And my ability to feel comfortable with others increased, and that was physically, emotionally, and mentally such a relief.
Yeah, I think that image of like water in the desert is a really beautiful image, because my experience as well is that these practices, and you use the word metta, which just to translate means loving kindness, these practices of kindness, they are kind of like water. They're fluid and they soften. I think that's one of the main things they do, is they soften. And then, of course, one is able to come closer to others as well. Well, I'm also very interested myself in the kind of courageous aspect of compassion. So it doesn't just make us soft, or it does make us soft, but through the softness comes strength and power. So I'm very interested in language like becoming a compassionate warrior. You know, it's not just about becoming soft as in always gentle. Maybe sometimes we need to be strong, and it enables that. And just to say at this point that I've known Colette a very long time, and I found it very inspiring seeing the way these compassion practices and mindfulness as well have really dripped right down through your being, you know, and softened your heart. And I know that this day that you're doing will be amazing, because you're an excellent teacher. So perhaps you could just tell people a little bit about the day now.
Yeah. So the second half of the program's Mindfulness for Health, or Mindfulness for Stress, focuses on the compassion practices. And I wanted to give them more space, to provide a dedicated space for us to explore, because they're rich beyond anything that we can think through. And I wanted to touch on their possibilities, their potential for the reduction of our own individual suffering, but also their potential for the alleviation of suffering collectively. These are really challenging times for many of us, and we need these practices more than ever. And of course, we'll start with ourselves and get a feel of what these practices mean for us, and to deepen that exploration. So there'll be inquiry, and there'll be time to work together, time to relax and connect with each other, and also to look at the source of the practices. And when I say the practice, I mean compassionate acceptance, treasure, pleasure, open heart, and connection. And to give them a context of the Brahma Viharas, or the divine abodes, or the four immeasurables, whatever you want to call them, to give them a context and to touch upon the source of the practices as well. So we deepen and expand our practices. So deep dive, this is suitable for breathworks teachers who want to extend their practice and deepen their understanding for themselves, and some of the interesting and unexpected consequences of teaching these practices as well. We'll explore that. But yeah, for this workshop's suitable for anyone who's interested in compassion-based practices, who want to explore them or come closer to them. So there'll be time and space for inquiry, to practice together and inquire, and to look at informal and formal practice, and some body work as well. And there'll be room for questions and answers as well.
Fantastic. Yeah. So yes, there'll be details on the link beneath this video, how to book and timings and so on. And I would strongly encourage people to consider booking on this day, because, as I say, the practices themselves are very deep, as Colette said, and they come from thousands of years of tradition. And Colette herself is not only a very good teacher, but she's deeply touched by these practices. And that will come across, I'm quite sure, on the day. And also, just to say that Colette's also very funny. So, you might be dealing with quite serious things on the day, because turning towards the heart can sometimes, be a little challenging. But Colette's able to hold that space very lightly. And I know that the day will be quite a mixture of discussion, inquiry, practice, relaxation, body work. And it'll be well worth your time. Good. So thanks very much, Colette.
Thank you.
And thanks for listening, everybody. And yeah, details will be below the video.